registered with the US Securities Exchange Commission. The number is 0000805157. That's their number. Under them is the Commonwealth of Australia Trading Company, LLC, registered in the District of Columbia. That is the cabal. That's what Trump is fighting to defeat. They have to be defeated, and they're getting... There's 18 companies controlled by the cabal. You might think you own your house, your car, your children, your wife. I've got a loud voice anyway, so hopefully I won't yell at it. That's what I'm trying to avoid. You don't own yourself, you don't own your cars, you don't own your working life, you don't own your wages when you get it. It's all been stolen off you. It's been stolen with what they call law, and it's not. It's acts and statutes made by companies. These ones. They're all registered companies, they all have ABNs. And if you look up HCA 11 of 2015, Queensland Rail versus one of the biggest unions in Queensland, and the High Court ruled if you've got an ABN number and provide services for money, you're a trading company. And you are. You can't change that. That ruling is binding on the courts, judges and people of every state. But we don't have courts. We'll get back to that in a minute. Now, what you've got to understand, when Whitlam did this, he signed the Uni-Greek Treaty of Rome. He took everything in this country and gave it to Rome. Not to the Catholic Church, to the Roman Church. You can't see there's a difference, you better. Because the Roman Church started the Catholic Church and Islam at exactly the same time. Islam has rosary beads the same. They have a crescent moon instead of a cross. All the people wear the old nuns' habits. When I was a kid, we used to call them Black Mariah there, but now it's all multicolours. It's the same outfit. It was a program. They work outside of our common law. Now, I'm going to take this off because I just want you to see where I'm coming from in relation to what they've done in relation to companies and how they've signed us up. But Whitlam went further. Whitlam created 300 new laws. One of them, Sunken Land Act, which means none of us are living on land. We're all living, by law, 10 feet under the water, under the Sunken Lands Act. And because of that, you're gender-neutral persons. And that's all you are. You're a nothing. You're dead. And by doing that, they can control you totally. And they do. And people have no idea what they're doing. So in this state, our nice little Labor government in 2003 in November put through an act called the Acts Amendment Repeals Court and the Legal Practice Act. Section 5 of that Act made all lawyers officers of the Crown of the Court, which is against our common law. Our common law, which dictates that lawyers cannot be officers of the court. This is it, King James Bible. It's not religion, it's the law. Law through the Church of England. That was when they started chewing into our common law in a big way. And then they went from there with that same act, section 8. Remove the Crown out of every single act, put in the governor, the state and everything else. They were told at the time by the opposition Attorney General, there is no such lawful entity as the state. There is a state created under 107, 108 and 109 of the Constitution. That's us. The people in a designated area in this country are the state. Does it have a hard border? No. This hard borders they're talking about, absolute lies and nonsense. Why? Clause 8 of the Constitution. You read it. It says when the colonies become states, the Boundaries Act no longer applies. However, when the Commonwealth is formed, it's formed as a self-governing colony of England, and the Boundaries Act applies. We're the Commonwealth. Where's our boundary in our Constitution? 12 nautical miles off the coast. The only lawful boundary. The only lawful border. A border is a boundary. There's no solid borders, that's all nonsense. Our little traitors sitting in Parliament can lie all they like. It is not a border defined by something solid. It's by an imaginary line. Now, he's saying we can quarantine the state. No, you can't. Section 69 of the Constitution lists a heap of laws removed from the states at federation and vested in the Commonwealth Parliament. And that's where people get lost with the Parliament, because the Parliament is a legislature. On page 791, the middle of the last paragraph states clearly, neither the federal nor the state parliaments are sovereign bodies, they're simply legislatures with limited authority. Do you know what a legislature is? I doubt anyone's ever told you. The executive? Well, now I think it's the Legislative Assembly and the Legislative Council and the Judiciary. That's the Parliament. It has specific powers and places in our Constitution. It is the job of the executive, which is the governor. 10 from the lower house he selects and 8 from the upper. They put legislation together. Goes to the Legislative Assembly, they debate it. Take out all the votes in it, line it up, get it to make sense in law. Then it goes to the Legislative Council. They make sure it complies with the Constitution. Because the states are created under 107, 108 and 109 and draw their authority referentially from our Constitution. Regardless of what's in the state Constitution, if there's no authority in the Commonwealth one, it doesn't exist in the state. No longer exists. And I'll come back to that in a tick, because you need to understand. Then there's the adjudicator, runs separate from the Parliament altogether. The Parliament at present is claiming to be a government and selects all judges and magistrates. They can't do either. Number one, judges, before they take their oath of office, they have to be selected by the Governing Council, by the way. Only the Governing Council can select all judges. Magistrates are selected under the Statute of Monopolies. Police are employed under the Statute of Monopolies. The right for politicians to exist is under the Statute of Monopolies. The right for justice of the peace and notary publics is under the Statute of Monopolies. But all political parties have tried to knock it out some 9 or 10 times with referendums since 1907. They want it out because they want to control it themselves. And Brian Burke in 1979 decided he was going to knock it out and make all judges and magistrates lawyers, in direct conflict with the Book of Law and the Bible, which is our common law. It says, woe unto you lawyers, deceivers of the people, liars, thieves and cheats. Pretty well got that right. And you go back into Hansard, 1898, Isaacs and Griffiths, two of the people who wrote the Constitution, made it abundantly clear Australia would rue the day that lawyers got control of the courts and our Parliament. It's full of them. Full of the biggest load of garbage ever put on 2 legs, because they lie for the better good. There's no such thing. You tell the truth or you don't talk. That's our system of law. It's in truth. Now people need to understand the executive in this state's not doing its job. Mr. Beasley sits down there, collects a huge big fax paycheck, has never sworn the law as required by our Constitution. Doesn't matter whether he wants to, he has to. Until he does, he's known. What he is, he's a traitor and a fraud and a liar. And it fits him perfectly. Now people have to understand, you are the Commonwealth. You are the authority. They are your servants. With your Constitution, they sit under it. They've passed acts and statutes, they chuck it away and they sit on it. And they tell you what to do. They have the right to pass laws for you, not over you. You have to understand the source of your law is from the common law. Where does that come from? The oath required to be taken by the character. To the coronation oath of the Queen, you have to understand who the crown is. There's two. There's a corporate crown in the City of Inner London, and if you're a lawyer, you swear an oath to the Bar Association of Western Australia, hooked directly to the City of London. When I joined the police force in 1975, I swore the oath contained in the Constitution. That is to the British Accreditation Registry. The Queen is a registrar. The reason being, she is the monarch. The crown in British law is God. The Queen is the monarch, God's representative. I'm still not getting religious. This is purely common law for those who don't want to believe. I do. You don't have to. But you have to understand it's our law. Now, when you swear that oath, there is no such thing as an oath in British law, even though it's called that. It's not an oath, it's a covenant to uphold Protestant faith, the Church of England, Magna Carta, which is part of England's Constitution. Magna Carta, 1688 Bill of Rights, Act of Settlement, Habeas Corpus, and the King James Bible. That's their Constitution. Like it or lump it, that's how it stands. When you understand the principles in the Bible, you'll understand how the Constitution works. Stay away from the religious part, just understand. One says, when Christ said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments, he's given you total control of your destiny in life. And that's what the Constitution gives you. Total control. Page 676 of this Constitution says, the Parliament is not supreme. And the very essence of federation is that that must be so. The Parliament, like everybody else, is subject to the law and must abide by it. Apply that to what Yap McGowan did last week and passed a law saying they're exempt. No, he's not. The Constitution says he's totally responsible. You have to understand that. Now, if they're not sovereign and they're not supreme, who is? We're the people. We're the people in New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia and Western Australia joined together in one indissoluble federation of the Commonwealth of Australia. Indissoluble, can't be dissolved. Now if these clowns are representing you, how can they call for a republic? Have you been to see them and say, we don't want your system, we don't want our system, we want a republic? No. Till we do, they commit treason. They breach the oath they both owe and should have made to us. Section 83 of the Constitution, subsection A, Constitution, Commonwealth Criminal Code, subsection A says, that's treason. You breach the oath you owe to the people. Section B says, you committed misprision of treason. That's concealing it. And they will laugh because they will know. Now, this little document has in it, hand signed, 1898. Dr. Coburn and Mr. Glenn, these are people who wrote the Constitution. Their comments prove what I just said in relation to Mr. O'Connor and Mr. Deacon. Now, what they have stated clearly is when the Commonwealth is proclaimed, any sovereignty, any supremacy, any right to change the constitutions without going to the people is removed totally from the parliaments. And it's granted fully to the people, invested in the people, because we are the Commonwealth. When you start to understand how the system really works, you understand we tell them what to do through our Constitution. Page 701 in this book has a diagram in it in relation to the executive. Actually, the first one is in relation to the House of Representatives, and the second one is in relation to the Senate. All in there. But above that sits the Commonwealth, quasi-sovereign. We're quasi-sovereign because we gifted part of our sovereignty to a constitution. We still remain totally sovereign, has gifted to our Constitution to control the Parliament. The Constitution does not control us. It is solely, whole and wholly a control on the Parliament, and them only. People, the gentleman said here, we have the right to a grand jury. You read section 80 of the Constitution, it refers to section 39 of Magna Carta, the Great Charter, as giving you a right to trial by jury. If you go to court, they'll trick you into accepting a trial with a jury, then you may as well not have a jury. As soon as you get a jury of 12, you can stand up and say, I want a large jury, under the provisions of clause 39 of Magna Carta. That is the Constitution of Britain. It is law in this country under clause 5 of the Constitution, cannot be removed. Cannot. And it's fully applicable under Imperial Acts, Application Act, and under the Colonial Laws Validity Act. The reason I bring up all these acts, some of you will remember them all, some will remember part, some of you may not remember any of it, but you need to know every bit of authority exercised in this country is exercised with the authority of the people, not the Parliament. Not the Parliament, they're not a government. The government is actually the Governor in the States with the Executive Council and the Governor General. Who is the Supreme Officer of the Parliament or the Government of the State? The Governor. It says so in the letters patent putting the office of Governor in place. States it very, very clearly. Why do they go outside that? Because they want to control it. So they cloud the whole issue and these are all the same. And the Parliament now is the government. You know. So what you've got to do as part of the Commonwealth, you've got to study the law, read the law, not greatly, just enough to cover your own backside. When you get the Constitution, if you do, you need to be conversant with Chapter 1, Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 outlines how the Parliament works. Section 7 through 23 lays out how elections are held. Not only the Electoral Commission, not only under the Federal Electoral Act, that's all nonsense. And if you check up its address and run it up, you'll find out it's in a paddock, a vacant paddock at Lakes Entrance in Victoria. I know a friend of mine went there and looked it up for me. I didn't go down there, it was too cold at the time anyway, I didn't want to go there. But the fact is that's where it's registered. And there's nothing there, because it doesn't exist in law. And yet people go in and vote. And what do? They get a nice little voting system to act. Political parties, and this is for individuals, for the Senate. Section 8 of the Constitution says you can vote for one person once. Why do you have to vote for at least 6 of the political parties, at least 12 of the individuals? Every single one of the disabled. Is it lawful? No. At the state level, where do you get your voting ability from? From the state constitution. The Parliament of the state claim they have the ability to amend the state constitution whenever they like. No, they don't. 106 of the Constitution says the state constitutions continue subject to this constitution and altered in accordance with the constitution. When Victoria saw that they couldn't touch it, they couldn't alter it at their will, which was part of section 73 in relation to certain issues. So she cemented the whole lot of them in place with a letters patent on the 29th of October 1900. And 6.1.9 the statute of monopoly says only the monarch can change the letters patent, only the monarch. Now, the state constitution continues subject to the Commonwealth Fund. In the state constitution you find out there's electoral boundaries. Do they exist after federation? What I've said already about boundaries, they don't. So the Constitution of the state continues subject to the Commonwealth one. Commonwealth one says the states can't set boundaries. So all your electoral boundaries are invalid. I took, in 2008, the Governor of Western Australia to the Supreme Court to answer to the Supreme Court why he thought he had the authority to change the electoral boundaries in the state constitution. I didn't say he couldn't touch them at all. I just said why he thought he had the authority, because he didn't. It's a legislation, you can't touch it. He committed an act of treason. It ended up with me getting the state solicitor to admit my name in capital letters is in Pig Latin and it's not me, it's a legal fiction. And I said, well, thank you for that. Now you explain to the court where the written contract is between me and that legal fiction. He said, there isn't one. I said, well, thank you very much. Now you've got a problem because you've ordered me before this court to speak for and on behalf of the legal fiction, which is what you call it. So now you have a huge problem because I'm the advocate now for that legal fiction. But you forced me to come here. He looked at the judge and says, don't look at me, you did it. That's the problem. After a little bit of an exchange, I left. He didn't get his $31,000 cost order that he was after. And I won. From now on, when I go on the court, anything they put there with my name in capital letters has no validity in law and they can't touch me. And all you have to do is declare, like I did, my name is Wayne Glew, I'm a living, breathing man. And the homosexual laws they passed, don't care if you like them or love them, it's a good piece of legislation in as much as the judge can't call you Mr., Mrs., and can't address you any other way than your Christian names, because that's the only name which is yours. And you decide that. As I told the magistrate in January last year, you don't get to call me Mr. That's gender defining, and your own act says you can't attach a gender to me. Therefore, my name is Wayne, you address me as Wayne, or I prosecute you, you go to jail for 12 years under your own legislation. You put it in place, you deal with it. And he said, I guess I call you Wayne. I said, I guess you do. That's how it's going to be. And he did. You have to grow some guts. Now, blokes don't like this. Go in your bathroom, drop your pants and see if you've got any guts to get on the credentials to produce it, because every single woman who has a baby and goes back and there's another one got more guts than all of us put together. So you can see it happen. And that's a fact. And that's the place for women. But at the end of the day, that's exactly what the problem is. We need to grow some guts. We need to stand there and say, oh, my name is Wayne Glew, I'm a living, breathing soul, I'm part of this Commonwealth, you are not. Get back under our Constitution, under our law, not acts and statutes. That's not law. They have to be assented to by a lawful governor. We don't have one. A lawful governor general. We don't have one. Yes?
Can you say that again?
From where?
Grow some more.
Shut up.
Living, breathing soul.
Yeah, I am a living, breathing soul, so all of you, if you're breathing, we'd be on the floor dead. You're not under 10 feet of water under their act. Nor can you be. But, and I was coming to that anyway, but while we're on that subject, if you've got any questions you want to ask, don't be afraid to ask, because if you wait till the end, you're not going to remember it. And I'm willing to stop and answer them and go back to what I'm saying, okay? Just so you know. Now, Mr. Palmer won a case. Against who? He won the case. He will get his $32 billion award, but we don't owe him one red cent. No. WA company. No crown, they're a company. They're a separate entity. One thing I said to the magistrate last January is, in his swore oath, I, Chris Myers, of each do solemnly swear I will serve the people and the state of Western Australia. He said yes, so I said, you swore to the state and the state, which one? Which one are you serving? I can tell you which one. The corporate state. Which one? and the Acts Amendment repeals Court and Legal Practice Act Section 8. And you're pretending to serve the states, which is the people, created under 107, 108 and 109 of the Constitution. That doesn't exist. I said, you're a liar. If I'm a liar, I'll call him a traitor, I'll call him a few other things too, which he didn't like. But the fact of the matter, he lied. Why did he lie? Because in 1996, HCA 48 for 1996, James Andrew McGinty took the state and others, which is the Labor Party, literally, took the state of Western Australia, which is the people, to the High Court to try and prove that the states existed prior to Federation. And if you start at paragraph 17 in HCA 48 of 1996, it explains very, very clearly the states weren't created that way. We were created under 107, 108, 109 and draw our authority referentially from that Constitution. So every single thing that's in that Constitution is binding on every single law in the states, notwithstanding anything that existed prior to Federation. We'll come to that in a minute, because it's very important. 106 is explained very, very clearly how the state constitutions are subject to the Commonwealth one. Everybody complains about local government. Western Australia, so-called government, which is a parliament, added the Local Government Act in 1979 to the state constitution without a referendum. The Act was number 88 in 1979. The state said if you get a copy of the Act from the government printers. I say government printers because it's not the state printers. It's that out. Now you have to understand, when they added that, they wiped out the state constitution. No longer complied with the Commonwealth one under 106. Can't continue repugnant to it. I put that to the Supreme Court. If you look up on YouTube, high treason and fraud in the Supreme Court. I went in front of Nunes and Murphy, then I running out of the court, pair of spineless weasels. Anyway, when you go to page 791, the beginning of the last paragraph, it says not only the High Court, but every single court of competent jurisdiction can declare a law of the Commonwealth and the state to be invalid by transgressing the Constitution. If you add another form of government to your state constitution, it transgresses the Constitution. It's invalid. And that's why I said to him, you have a duty to declare that law invalid. He said, I'm not going to. I said, well, what the hell are you doing in our court? They don't like being spoken to like that, but you have the right to talk to them like that. You are supreme and sovereign. They are not. You have to understand. You literally tell them what to do, not the other way around. They don't like it. Every single state added local government at the same time. How many referendums have we had rejecting local government? 4. 1974.
77.
Eh?
77.
I didn't ask you. 1974. 1988. 1999. And we had another one. 1977. We said no. No to giving the federal parliament the ability to finance local government directly. Because if we had said yes, we accept they have the right to exist. So it was a referendum to add local government by being sleazy, but they're sleazy. They're politicians. That's what it is. And if there's any politicians today, I'm not talking about you, so you're excused for today. I'll get into you tomorrow. Right, now, they are now trying to claim there was residual powers which carried over from the colonies into the new entities known as the states at Federation. Only one problem. Clause 7 of the Constitution. Says on the proclamation of the Constitution, the old entities known as the Australasian Council and the colonies cease to exist. Cease to exist. So that took place on the 9th of July 1900. It was proclaimed and gazetted as our Constitution, taking effect on the 1st of January 1901. So we had 4 months and 25 days of imperial law only. Nothing continued over from the colonies to the new states. Nothing. There was nothing there to continue over. When Victoria knew that every single colony was pumping out dozens of laws they thought were going to automatically carry over into the new federation, backfired. She wasn't as silly as they thought she was. She certainly was not silly. She took the throne at 13. Her first instruction to her advisors were, get in front of me. Any single one of you who thinks you can run this country better than I can, open your mouth and you can go to the gallows. That was her words. You are not going to tell me what to do. She was 13 years old. Not a fool. Very, very intelligent person. And she was a wake up to all their garbage. Now, she put in direct access to the Privy Council, something they claim we no longer can have. Rubbish. The Constitution allows them to set the reasons we can go to the Privy Council, and it does not include the abolition of constitutional reasons. They cannot take that right away. That's under Victoria 28 and 29, a direct order from Queen Victoria which carries over. Then you get the Stephen Steers and all the other little gentlemen that say none of that exists. In fact, we have a Liberal MP in Margaret River now telling you straight out that when Queen Victoria died, so did all the letters patent. Well, sorry, in February 1920, King George V put them all back in with the letters patent and said they stand, they remain locked in law. They can't be removed. 2008, Queen Elizabeth came here and addressed the Federal Parliament. She said, I uphold every single one of my great-grandmother's letters patents, and you will abide by them. Channel 9 were in the court, in the Parliament. They documented it all and then refused to print it. So we never got to see what it was. That's nothing unusual for them. Pack of liars. Now, let's get back to local government. In here, this is another Commonwealth book. I've got loads and loads of books from the government. They write all this dribble all the time, and you can see through it once you learn our book. And it states there, they produced the Australia Act under section 51, subsection 38 of the Constitution.